Kevin stared at Delilah, still overjoyed that his cure for her voice had worked. The strange billionaire Desmond Underhill was under lock and key, and the birds in the aviary were hushed by the incredible lullaby coming out of Delilah Turner's mouth. After years of vocal problems that led to her inability to speak, let alone sing, Delilah was finally cured, and the mistake Malachi Turner had made in trying to deepen her voice all that time ago had been undone. She sang and sang, from the aviary all the way back to central Nashville, where Kevin brought Delilah to return her to the life that her talents deserved. I can't go back to work, and I can't go home. I need to get to a venue. I need to get to a talent office and sign with an agent. At the very least, I should stand outside the nearest music company and belt until they have to give me a record deal. I can never thank you enough, Kevin. I can't believe you made this happen just for me. Delilah was draping herself all over Kevin, all but intoxicated on her recovered talent. Kevin, on the other hand, was just eager to get back to Malachi Turner and claim his reward for helping Delilah. Turner had the Jewel of Truth, which would be the last thing Kevin needed to ensure his win in the epic clash and ascension to the upper realm. He felt very assured that he had completed the task fully and satisfactorily, and now he would have the jewel for himself. Kevin politely took Delilah's grateful arms off of him, while making sure to fiddle with his wedding ring as a reminder that he was not interested in Delilah the way she was starting to appear to be interested in him. It was my pleasure helping you, Delilah. It was great to meet you, and I wish you luck in your singing career. I want you to let me know about your career and its progress. You might not know this, but I oversee an entertainment company, Williams Media, that is always looking for talent. But for now, I have to get back to work. Please excuse me. Delilah was both delighted to know that Kevin might help her career in the future, and unhappy that he seemed to be eager to leave her. At least let me treat you to a date for helping me. Come by the bar later. We'll have a drink. Get to know each other, maybe do a little dancing. Kevin sighed. I'm flattered, but I'm spoken for. It was great to meet you, Delilah. He shook her hand and said goodbye, cruising right over to the Turner Museum to see Malachi Turner. Natasha, Delilah's sister and Malachi's guardian in the Turner Museum, buzzed him into the building, even though the museum was closed for the day. Welcome back, Kevin. I trust you had a successful journey? Kevin nodded. Malachi must have filled her in on what he was up to. Can I see him, please? Of course. Natasha unlocked the door to Malachi's preserved study, where most of the museum guests were not allowed to go, and Kevin entered swiftly, making a beeline to the bookcase. He pulled back the maroon book emblazoned with the ancient rune, and the shelf jutted forward for him to enter. Kevin? Natasha called. Kevin turned around, his hand on the shelf ready to close it behind him. Yes? Thank you. You've changed my sister's life today. You just might have healed our entire family. I won't forget what you've done for us. If you ever need a favor, you know where to find me. Kevin nodded and smiled at her. My pleasure. He closed the shelf behind him and descended the tight spiral staircase down to the bunker below, whose layout was identical to that of the Turner house. When he entered Malachi's study through the corresponding bookcase, Malachi was at his desk dunking a biscuit into a mug of milky coffee and reading a newspaper that Natasha had sent down that morning. Ah, Kevin, back so soon. How did it go? Malachi seemed awfully relaxed considering how intent he had been on Kevin to heal his granddaughter's voice before he handed over the Jewel of Truth. Kevin sat down at the seat opposite Malachi's. It's done. She's singing like never before. Her range has improved to include those low notes you were trying to give her in the first place, and I've never seen anyone as happy as she was when I left her just now. Malachi smiled and the wrinkles deepened around his eyes. Thank goodness. I owe you a great debt of gratitude, Kevin Williams. You are truly a remarkable herbalist. Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Gratitude wasn't the only debt Malachi owed him, but he didn't want to lose the old man's respect by pushing too hard for the Jewel of Truth. Thank you, Malachi. It means a lot coming from you. I hope I'm not being rude by saying I'm in a time crunch and would love to resolve the rest of our deal so I can get back to my preparations for the epic clash." Malachi nodded. "Of course. The Varibarbadal, the Jewel of Truth. It's time I reveal it to you." Kevin got excited as Malachi pulled the chain out of his many layers of clothes. It was laced around his neck and held a heavy skeleton key at its end. Malachi pulled the chain and key up around his head, then fitted the key into the bottom drawer of his desk. The drawer squeaked as it opened. It had not been disturbed in many, many years. But at last, Malachi pulled out the small, golden, jewel-encrusted box, inlaid with a massive emerald right at its center. "It's beautiful," Kevin remarked. He had to sit on his hands to stop himself from reaching for it before Malachi offered it to him. "It's my greatest accomplishment to date. I knew I was onto something big when the society started asking questions. They ran me underground for this jewel, Kevin. You must remember that. If you are caught with it, you will be excommunicated. Your reputation will be ruined from here to Timbuktu. Are you sure this is an undertaking you want to endure?" Kevin nodded. "I am. I need it. I can't let lousy cheaters and liars ascend to the upper realm when real herbalists deserve the honor. I'm not doing this just for my own sake, but so that honest members of our profession and masters of our craft can get their dues." Malachi nodded too. "A noble endeavor, no doubt. But I wonder if before I hand it over, you have proof of your good deed?" Kevin's face fell. He thought that he and Malachi had a friendly relationship at this point and that they trusted one another. But when Malachi said these words, a notable shift in tone rippled throughout the room. Everything felt colder and more serious. Kevin sobered. "I don't have anything with me. How can I prove her voice is back if she won't see you and you refuse to leave your lair?" Malachi shrugged. "I'm sure you will come up with something. Forgive me, but I've been burned by herbalists before. I'll need you to secure proof somehow to finalize our agreement." Kevin tried his best to hide his disappointment. He didn't want to give Malachi any more reason to withhold his last hope of playing a fair game in the clash, but he was also angry at being so close to the solution just to be given one more hoop to jump through. But then he remembered that Delilah had asked him out. Maybe he could turn that drink she wanted to get with him into just the opportunity he needed to get Malachi's jewel. "Fine. I'll get her up on stage tonight, but you have to come watch her sing. You need to put on your disguise or do whatever it is you do to join the living above ground. When you see her sing when the crowd goes wild for her, then can I please use your jewel of truth?" Malachi extended a hand across the table. "You have my word." Kevin shook it and left, hurrying back up the spiral staircase and out into the Turner Museum study. Natasha was dusting books when he emerged. "I need your help." They went back into town where they met up with Delilah. Kevin just had to get her a gig tonight and this whole mess of a sidetrack would be over. But looking at Delilah now, he could see that she wasn't ready to be the center of attention. Natasha explained it on their way there. "When my sister lost her voice, she sank into a deep depression. She stopped caring for herself. She left her job and stayed holed up in her house for months. It wasn't until the city shut off the lights that she got up and got a job as a bartender in a dive bar downtown." In looking at Delilah now, Kevin could see the effects of what Natasha had told him. Delilah's hair was flat and colorless, and her teeth were yellowed and chipped. She had the overall appearance of a very tired person or a war veteran who hadn't slept since she returned from service. She was behind the counter of the bar where she worked and charming the customers as she always did, but her ill-fitting black clothes were clearly being worn to hide as much of her body as possible. This was a woman who went years without a bit of confidence. But it wasn't a lost cause entirely. Regaining her voice had given Delilah a new lease on life, and she had the shine in her eyes of a much younger and healthier person. To most people, it wouldn't be evident, but Kevin could see it. and knew that the spark was again in her soul. If we can do something to make her outside match her inside, she'll dazzle on stage tonight. What do you think? Kevin asked Natasha. Natasha eyed her sister carefully. Delilah didn't know they had appeared to meet with her again. She was in her element behind the bar. Natasha looked around the bar and saw dancers in full hair, makeup, and costumes, emerging from a black curtain behind the small stage at the front of the room, ready for their number. "Follow me." Kevin obeyed, and he followed as Natasha grabbed Delilah from behind the bar and brought both of them backstage to the dressing room. Kevin blushed. Should I be here? Around him, the dancer stations were laden with their undergarments and other personal effects. "We'll be quick," Natasha assured him. "What's going on? Did you change your mind about that drink, Kevin?" Delilah asked. "You're going on stage tonight and debuting that new voice of yours," Natasha explained. "I have someone very special coming to see you." Delilah lit up. "Is it someone from Williams Media? A manager? An agent?" Kevin kept it vague, worried Delilah might refuse to perform if she knew Malachi was coming to watch, and get the proof he needed that Delilah's voice had been restored. "You'll see." Within minutes, Natasha had worked magic. Delilah's hair was shiny and voluminous, her teeth invisible behind bright lipstick, and her makeup done so well it was like she had reversed 10 years in age. Natasha borrowed an outfit from the dancer's rack and dusted off the guitar on the wall for visiting musicians. "Do you still have that old song in your back pocket? You wrote it when we were girls, and I thought it was just brilliant. You know the one." Delilah nodded, unable to take her eyes off of herself in the mirror. "Sunflower. Of course. Let me just tune this baby up and it'll be showtime." Natasha and Kevin left Delilah to get warmed up and went back out to the main bar. Kevin spied Malachi lurking at the entrance in an argument with the bouncer of the bar. "What's the problem here?" he asked, intervening.
"This guy's trying to come in here with a fake ID,"
the bouncer told Kevin, holding up the card Malachi had flashed at him. Kevin almost laughed. Malachi had tried to get in with a 200-year-old citizen ID. The paper was yellowing and frayed at the edges and featured a black and white photograph of a much, much younger Malachi. The date was faded, but it started with the number 18. Kevin improvised. "Grandpa is a joker, all right. Come on, though. The guy is clearly over 21 years old," Kevin said to the bouncer.
"I still need to verify identification," the bouncer snarled. "Come to think of it, I don't think you showed me any ID when you came in."
Kevin didn't have any time for this. He grabbed Natasha, who rolled her eyes at the bouncer. "Come on, Nate, really? That's my grandfather, for crying out loud. Let him in." They pulled Malachi inside and got settled at a high-top table, ready for the performance. Kevin was just relieved they had gotten there without any issues, until a big burly cowboy, clearly drunk, stumbled over to their table and ran right into Kevin. Kevin stood up. "Are you all right, man?" But the cowboy wasn't so kind.
"You knocked into me. Say you're sorry."
Kevin thought, here we go. Why do these guys show up at the worst times? And how, Kevin wondered, could he control the extent of his levels and powers if he were to get into a bar brawl with a man whose only ability was to carry 2 beers and a shot of whiskey in one hand? Natasha and Malachi Turner sat at the table, waiting to see what Kevin would do. Now that Delilah's voice was restored and Kevin had gotten Malachi to agree to come watch her perform, all that was left to do was let Delilah sing, and Malachi would hand over the jewel of truth to Kevin. But none of that would happen if this burly cowboy who had bumped into Kevin's table caused a disruption that got them all kicked out of the joint. The drunk man had stumbled into Kevin on his way to his own seat and now was ready to square up and fight Kevin then and there. Kevin put his hands up. "I don't want any trouble, man. I'm here for the show, just like you. Why don't you let me help you get back to your table and get some hot coffee in you?" The cowboy was huffing and puffing at Kevin now.
What the heck did you just say to me? Do I look like a helpless little girl who needs your help getting to the table? Don't speak to me that way, or I'll show you just how much of a man I can be."
Kevin rolled his eyes. These guys were all the same. "I'm sorry to offend your precious sensibilities, but the show is starting soon. Move along now." The cowboy spat at Kevin's feet and got right up in his face.
"You don't tell me what to do, you little ant-man. Look at you. You're not even wearing cowboy boots. Does this fine establishment not deserve your respect? You must not be from around here. We don't have boots in this town to fit those tiny little feet anyway. Where are you from, stranger?"
Kevin was doing mental gymnastics to keep up with this drunk's rambling line of questioning, but he stood up tall and said, "Chicago." The cowboy laughed throatily and called upon the attention of the room at large.
"You hear that, y'all? We got ourselves a Yankee."
Kevin couldn't believe how dumb this man was. "That's New York, but good try, Your Highness." The cowboy didn't like that. He slammed his beer down on the table, splashing Natasha and Malachi in the process.
"What did you just call me?"
The cowboy didn't wait for a response, instead cocking his fist back and swinging at Kevin, who easily dodged the lazy, misguided attack. Surely, that's not necessary. But the cowboy was all the more angry at having missed. He reared up again, pulling the other arm back to swing at Kevin, but Kevin went on the offense, bringing a knee up into the man's stomach, then grabbing the back of the man's neck and slamming his face down on the table. The crowd that had gathered to watch let out a unified, "Ooh." Kevin held the man's head down and leaned in to whisper, "Are you done now?" But the cowboy wrapped an arm around Kevin and pulled him away from himself, straightening up. He lurched forward to tackle Kevin, but Kevin jumped out of the way and let him crash into the pillar behind him. "You're not going to win this. Let's just settle down now." The cowboy didn't listen. He stood up and rushed Kevin again, but Kevin hit him with a simple uppercut to the jaw, and the man spun around and collapsed. It was over. Sometimes it was difficult for Kevin not to allow his level 7 skills to spill over into a battle with an ordinary, but in this case, his opponent was so drunk and unskilled that there was a need for Kevin to do more than lay one well-placed fist on him. Kevin looked up at the crowd who were now staring at him, so silent and surprised you could hear a pin drop. "Why don't we just enjoy the show? Okay, everyone?"
"Yeah, right. Out."
Kevin turned around to see the bouncer behind him irate at the violence that had just occurred, pointing a quivering finger to the exit. Kevin turned to Natasha. "Make sure Malachi sees Delilah's performance." The bouncer dragged the knocked-out cowboy out of the bar and Kevin followed, sitting on a bench across the street to wait. Soon enough, Malachi and Natasha emerged from the bar. "So?" Kevin asked. He had hoped Delilah had gone on and sung her song so Malachi would have proof that Kevin completed his task. And Malachi smiled, nodding. It was clear that Malachi had seen and heard that his granddaughter's glorious voice was restored. The two went back to Malachi's hidden bunker beneath the Turner Museum, and Malachi pulled the gold box back out of his desk. The Jewel of Truth sat, inlaid in the box's lid, and with a little negotiation, Malachi was able to pop it out and hand it over. "You've done brilliantly. Now go, win the epic clash. You might make chief herbalist one of these days," Malachi said, in a tone like a mentor who was proud of his student. Kevin smiled back at him. "If I do, I'll pardon you of your crimes and you'll be able to rejoin the society and live in the real world again." Malachi shrugged. "Perhaps, but there is something to be said about living a life where only a few people know how to find you." Kevin folded the Jewel of Truth in a piece of cloth and tucked it into his jacket pocket, then got up to leave the study, but Malachi wasn't done. "Wait a moment, Kevin. There's something else you should know." "What's that?" Kevin asked, really eager to be getting home to melt down the jewel into something consumable. "That jewel is a highly concentrated mass of varibarbitol. You can't just go chipping pieces off and sprinkling them like salt over prime rib. You need to distill it and turn it into a palatable consumable pill or concoction. Too little of that stuff will make someone extra social, and the right amount will get them to answer any question you ask them honestly and without any inhibitions. A little extra might make them appear drunk. They'll be stumbling around, spilling their secrets to anyone who will listen. And too much of it, well, too much of it could kill them. Kevin tensed his jaw. Did the society try to stop you from making the jewel because they didn't want to give up their secrets, or because they thought you might use it as a weapon to kill people? Malachi sighed. They didn't trust me as far as they could throw me, but I'm not a killer. Kevin, if I was, I would have means at my disposal to kill people that wouldn't require me to spend a decade in New Zealand harvesting varibarbitol. I can promise you that. I'm only telling you about the dangers of the jewel so you don't do anything reckless. Good luck. I'll be careful. Kevin left, satisfied he had the jewel, but wondering if he had left with more questions than answers. Back in Chicago, Lily and Rachel were having dinner at Lily and Kevin's penthouse. They had spent a long day at Rachel's hotel meeting with vendors who were competing with each other to contribute to Lily's gala, introducing her new charity to the world. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I got some good news as we were leaving the hotel today when you were putting in the takeout order, Rachel said, dipping her steak fries in a big bowl of ketchup between them. They'd picked up burgers from their favorite local joint and were indulging as a celebration of their progress at work. What's that? Lily asked. She was secretly checking her phone every couple of seconds under the table, waiting for Kevin to call. She hadn't spoken to him all day and was starting to get worried about her husband. He wouldn't tell her all the details of what he had to do in Nashville, but she felt it safe to assume that it would be dangerous. Nicole Sawyer got back to me. She's in. Rachel clapped, so pleased with herself. You're kidding. Lily stared at her best friend, unable to believe it. Nicole Sawyer was the most beloved movie star in Chicago, and she had agreed to MC their gala, meaning they were sure to raise more money than they ever would have without her. Lily knew Rachel had attended to her many times at the hotel, but Lily had stopped herself from getting too excited that she might actually say yes to this favor. I'm not. Now why don't you just go ahead and call Kevin yourself rather than rudely staring at your phone while we're trying to have a conversation? Rachel winked at Lily, knowing she was waiting for her husband. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude, Lily blushed. Don't worry about it. Go on. Rachel left the kitchen to give Lily some privacy, and Lily dialed Kevin's number. Hey, honey, how are you? Kevin picked up the phone. He was halfway back to the Myriad compound in Nashville, debating in his head whether to work on the Jewel of Truth right here, right now, or to go back up to Chicago and try to cobble together enough resources from the remains of his burn-down lab. I'm great. We just found out that Nicole Sawyer is joining us for the gala. You have to come. Promise me you'll be back in time? Lily paced around nervously, hoping Kevin was headed home soon. Kevin made his decision. If Lily missed him so badly back home, then home is where he would make the truth serum out of the Jewel of Truth. I'm on my way now. Kevin knew that returning to Lily was always a priority, but this time it might complicate his other mission, which was to distill the truth serum and succeed in the epic clash. Had he made the right decision or the wrong one? Kevin knew what he wanted to do. He had succeeded in healing Malachi Turner's granddaughter, and she was back on track to becoming a country music star. Not only that, but Malachi had handed over the Jewel of Truth, the concentration of varibarbitol that Kevin needed to create a truth serum that would make his enemies in the epic clash expose themselves for their cheating, clearing the path for Kevin to ascend to the upper realm. Now he had to get back to Chicago to make that serum. Lily missed him, and the clock was ticking down to the epic clash, so he would find what he needed from the remains of his own laboratory that had been partially burned down by Mario Kessler and Ethan Williams. But right now, he was still in Nashville, on his way back to the Myriad compound to grab his things and tell Brett Stewart he was leaving. Brett showed up in Kevin's room at the Myriad compound just as Kevin finished throwing the few belongings he had brought with him into his duffel bag.
"Going so soon?"
he asked, leaning in the doorway, looking both casual and like he was blocking the exit intentionally to slow Kevin's departure. Kevin smiled, trying to disarm Brett. "I got what I came for, and now I need to get back to Chicago as soon as possible. Thank you again for letting me stay here and work with the Myriads. I won't forget all you've done for me." Brett shook his head.
"No, I'm sure you won't. Tell me, whatever you were doing researching Malachi Turner, was it for the Clash?"
Kevin nodded. "It was. And I'm not quite done yet, but I have high hopes that I'll be successful."
"Well, that's good. I'll remind you, Kevin, that if you do ascend to the upper realm, or honestly, even if you don't, I'll be calling on you again soon. The war against the Pinnacle is looming. It's a matter of time before tensions between your enemies and your friends reach a boiling point, and I hope that when the time comes, you'll remember how much I've done for you. I need you in this fight. Can I get your word that you'll be there?"
Kevin remembered that he had promised Brett a handful of power pills in exchange for helping him out, and he dug the bottle out of his duffel bag and handed it to Brett. "This was our agreement, Brett, as promised." Brett examined the bottle as Kevin pushed past him out into the hallway and down the stairs to the main floor of the house. Brett followed.
"Kevin, I know your energies are stretched to the limit, but your position in the Myriads does make it crucial that you be present when the Pinnacle's attack comes. You must be on the right side of this war."
Kevin was getting impatient now because he was really in a hurry to get back to Chicago. "Brett, I can't focus on anything but the Clash right now, and we don't even know that there will be a war. The threat from Pinnacle has been looming for a long time, and for hundreds of years they retreated to Apex Island and let the Foundation live in peace. At this exact moment, I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. We'll talk when there's something to actually talk about." Brett crossed his arms, watching Kevin pull on his shoes and get ready to leave the compound.
"You'll see, Kevin. The time will come, and if you're not with us, you're against us. I can't believe that after all I've done for you, you can't just promise me this one thing."
Brett was blocking the front door now, and Kevin's brain was back in Chicago in his lab. He needed to come up with something to make Brett let him go, but without locking himself into a war that he didn't know he would be available to fight. After all, if he somehow did poorly in the epic clash, he would have his herbalist power stripped from him entirely. Kevin looked Brett in the eye and said, "How about I owe you one? You can cash in a favor for me after the clash, but that's as specific as I can get." He stuck his hand out to Brett. Brett sighed.
"Fine, but I'm taking this seriously, and I'll be taking it to the bank when the Pinnacle returns to make their move against the Foundation."
He shook Kevin's hand and let him through. Kevin turned around when he was halfway down the hallway. "Brett, thank you. I mean it. I do appreciate all you've done for me." Brett just waved, so Kevin left. Back in Chicago, Kevin found his lab in much better shape than he left it. The rubble and ruin were cleared, the furnace had been cleaned off, and the shelves, cabinets, and lab tables that had been destroyed were replaced with shiny new ones. A few workers hurried back and forth, and Kevin could hear the sounds of construction coming from deeper within the space. "Larry!" Kevin caught his lab manager, Larry Barnes, coming out of the dried herb stockroom.
"Kevin, welcome back. How was Nashville?"
Larry asked, leading Kevin back to his lab table. Kevin pulled the cloth holding the Jewel of Truth out of his jacket pocket and flashed it to Larry. "It was successful. What's going on in here?" Larry grinned.
"Well, I thought we should get this place back in working order. Our products are on the market after all, and we're in high demand. The Healing Arts School students were eager to get back to work, so here we are."
Kevin looked around and saw that indeed Medi, Zara, Mora, Yuki, Hiro, and Amber were stationed around the lab, working on their experiments. "I appreciate that, Larry. Thank you for rallying the troops. Are you busy? I could use some assistance with this." Larry clapped him on the shoulder.
I am here to assist you. I'm busy with whatever you tell me to be busy with.
Great. We need to liquefy this jewel and then distill the varibarbitol to safe levels. I suspect some trial and error will be involved, and I'll be the test subject. Kevin had decided this on his way home. If Malachi was right and too much of the varibarbitol could be dangerous or even fatal, he wouldn't put anyone else's life on the line. Larry looked worried but took the stone from Kevin's cloth and put it in a cast iron pot to melt it down.
You got it, Kevin.
Larry brought the pot over to the furnace to liquefy, and Kevin pulled out his secret book to look for any hints about what amount of varibarbitol would be safe for human consumption, as well as which herbs would be best to dilute its toxicity while still promoting its effectiveness. He gathered his materials as well as a handful of herbs and minerals to try and set them up on a lab table with a jug of saline solution for dilution. I'll start with 10 millimeters and see where that gets me. With my height and weight factored in, it shouldn't kill me. Even so, Kevin double-checked his math a few times before Larry brought over the melted jewel. Varibarbitol had a natural green color to it, and it glowed in the dark of the pot it sloshed around in. Kevin picked up his glass dropper and drew up 10 millimeters of the stuff, dropping it in a beaker. He then mixed in the saline solution and the rest of the herbs and minerals, a few of which he had added to pull out and dispose of the extra poisons. He stirred the concoction around in the beaker and lifted it to Larry.
To your health.
Kevin toasted, and he drank the potion in one sip. Larry watched nervously as Kevin swallowed and waited for the serum to take effect.
How do you feel?
Larry asked. His arms were restless at his sides. He was prepared to catch Kevin if Kevin were to suddenly pass out or worse. Kevin frowned at the beaker he had drunk from. I feel normal. I don't think I put in enough. But I've got 10 millimeters in my system now. I'm no longer a controlled variable. We need someone else. He looked around. Feeling guilty that he had wasted the inconsequential trial on himself, he could wait until the varibarbitol passed out of him, but that could be hours. He could make himself throw up, but no doubt some of the substance had already been absorbed into his bloodstream. He would just have to be extra careful and borrow someone. Hey, Mehdi, got a second? Mehdi looked up from his workstation at Kevin, who waved him over. He put down what he was doing and joined Kevin and Larry. What's up? How do you feel about taking part in a dangerous trial? Kevin asked. Mehdi beamed. I'm in. Kevin was surprised. You don't want to know what it is? You're not worried. Mehdi shrugged. I trust you. You're the winner of this year's Herbalist Society completion. I'm sure you won't kill me or anything. Hit me with it. Kevin and Larry exchanged a look, and Larry nodded. All right, great. We're making a truth serum, and we're trying to get the combinations right. If I don't give you enough, you'll feel normal like me. I just tried it and nothing happened. If I give you too much, you'll feel drunk. The goal is for you to feel fine, maybe a little happy, and that you'll tell me the truth when I ask you a question. Mehdi nodded. Sounds good, boss. Hit me with it. Kevin did some quick math to make sure he wasn't dosing Mehdi in the lethal zone, then mixed up a truth serum for him. Drink this. Mehdi did as he was told. Before he even put the beaker down, Kevin saw him starting to change. A relaxed, loopy look came over Mehdi's face. His eyes relaxed and he started grinning like a fool. How do you feel? Kevin asked. Drunk. Like I'm at the dentist and they gave me laughing gas. Mehdi giggled. Kevin could work with that. Okay, great. Let's start with your name. What is your name? Mehdi arranged his face to mock Kevin's serious tone, and in a deep voice he said, Mehdi Fidel, at your service. He broke out in giggles again. Kevin whispered to Larry, I gave him too much. We'll have to try it again, but we're narrowing it down. I feel good about this. Mehdi stuck his head into the conversation. Hi, Mr. Whisper. I have a secret for you. Oh, yeah? Yeah, and it's pretty serious. I've been deceiving you, Kevin. I've been hiding something huge from you for a while now. Kevin studied Mehdi, unsure if he was serious, but the happy expression had left Medi's face, and he was looking worried, nervous to spill the beans. Kevin thought, what could it be? Kevin knew that just days before the epic clash, a surprise among his lab workers could be the kind of terrible news that would undermine his success in the competition and lead to a disastrous failure. Kevin and Larry stared at Medi. Kevin had rushed back to the lab in Chicago, finally in possession of the Jewel of Truth. And they were running trials on the amounts of melted down varibarbital that would produce the best effects. Kevin had taken not quite enough, and it seemed like they might have given Medi too much, as Medi had turned into a giggling mess. But now, Medi looked serious and sober, and he had just told Kevin that he had something huge to confess. This could be a moment of truth, as it were. Would the truth serum really make Medi give up a secret he had been harboring for days? Was Medi a spy, a traitor, or something even worse? The kid had been doing great work for Kevin, and Kevin didn't want this secret to be something horrible and damning. "What is it that you need to tell me?" Kevin asked. Medi steadied himself against the lab table and blew a big breath through puffed-out cheeks. "Remember the fire that happened in the lab?" Kevin looked at Larry, not liking where this was going. "Yes." "When we were running out, I passed right by a fire extinguisher. I could have stayed and tried to put it out, but I just kept running. I chose to save myself over saving the lab. I'm so sorry." Medi burst into tears in front of them, the varibarbital overwhelming his emotions. Kevin sighed in relief. "Medi, you don't have to be sorry for that. The fire spread way too fast for one extinguisher to be able to help anything. If you had stayed, you might have died. You did the right thing. Don't worry about it, all right?" Kevin put a cautious hand on Medi's shoulder, which Medi took as an invitation to throw his arms around Kevin's neck and cry into his shoulder. Larry peeled him off of Kevin and led him back to his station to calm down. Kevin shook off that failure. His second trial was over, but now he had a set range of safe levels of varibarbital. He had found the upper limit, and no one would be risking their lives to help him figure out the right concoction. This was progress. He looked up at the other healing arts students sprinkled around the lab, all looking over at him since Medi made such a scene. Kevin clapped his hands together. "All right, who's next?" Yuki and Hiro stepped up to the plate. Kevin welcomed them over and gave them an explanation of what he was doing. "Basically, I want to test if you're lying to me. As you can see, Medi was given too much of the truth serum. My bad. But it's not dangerous, and he'll be back to himself in an hour or two." Yuki and Hiro nodded, and Yuki said, "I think we're up for that." Kevin redid his math to factor in Yuki and Hiro's heights and weights. They weren't identical twins, so he had to go for things twice, but within a few minutes, he was handing them both beakers to drink. He was now keenly aware that he had a very limited supply of varibarbital. The Jewel of Truth was a large gem, but each trial was a waste of material that could have been used on Kevin's enemies in the epic clash. The twins drank, and neither of them went loopy or sloppy as Medi had. "How do you feel?" Kevin asked them. They looked at each other, then back at Kevin, and said, "Great," in unison. Kevin took that as a sign that the truth serum was affecting them equally, and so far within stable levels. "Perfect. So here's what we're going to do. I'll leave the room and you will both select one item from the lab to hide on your person. When I come back, I'm going to ask you to tell me what you took, and you're going to try to lie to me. If you get away with it, then we'll have to try a new dose. But if you tell me willingly what you're hiding, then we'll know we have the right amount of varibarbital in the truth serum. Got it?" The twins nodded in unison. Kevin walked out of the room and paced around the lobby of his office suite. He gave it 5 minutes before he went back inside. Hiro and Yuki were sitting at the lab table where he had left them, both with their poker faces on. "Hey guys, how are we feeling now?" Kevin asked. "I feel mostly normal, but I'm nervous that you'll ask me a question and I'll have to answer," Hiro joked. Yuki agreed. "I'm just in a very good mood. I think I don't want to do anything reckless, but I feel like I could do anything right now. I want to run a marathon or something. Kevin grinned. That's great. That's a side effect of the Varibarbital. Not only will you willingly tell your secrets, but you'll feel confident while you do so. It helps to lower people's guards. He stood in front of both of them and looked Yuki up and down. Let's start with a couple of warm-up questions. I want you to do your best to lie to me, okay? I know the correct answers already, so what's your name? Yuki twisted up his face like he was thinking really hard. He held back the words as long as he could, but after a moment he blurted out, Yuki Ishikawa. Crap, I couldn't lie. Kevin nodded. Very good. Don't beat yourself up. Okay, how old are you? Yuki put on his concentration face again and managed to strain out the words, 21, before the truth serum made him correct himself. 20. He sighed, hanging his head. Kevin was getting excited now. Excellent. And what have you stolen from me today, Yuki? Yuki's right hand twitched next to his pocket like it was taking everything in him not to pull out the contraband and beg for forgiveness. I stole a thermometer. Let's see it, Kevin commanded. Yuki pulled a small glass thermometer out of his pocket and placed it on the table. Kevin shook his hand. Well done, Yuki. How did it feel? Yuki shrugged. I felt disappointed in myself when I was trying and failing to lie to you. But when I told the truth, it felt great. Like a hit of dopamine in my brain, rewarding me for it. Excellent. Kevin turned to Hiro. Your turn. Hiro shook out his arms and legs and stretched his neck like a runner approaching the starting line of a race. Hit me. Kevin looked him dead in the eye and Hiro held his gaze, smiling. What's your name? Hiro's smile fell. Harry. Henry. Hiro, he blurted. Kevin nodded. Where do you live? Hiro was starting to sweat now, like he was holding in vomit rather than the truth. Brooklyn. I live in South Side. I live on the south side of Chicago. Shoot! This is hard. Kevin chuckled. Good. It should be. What did you steal from my lab? Kevin almost felt guilty at how much he was enjoying this little game. He would have a lot of fun messing with people at the Epic Clash once he dosed them. Hiro couldn't even manage to think of a lie before his hands pulled the pair of lighters out of his pocket. Whoa, it feels good to get that off my chest. Kevin shook his hand. Well done, guys. Go ahead and get back to work while I turn this stuff into pills. Thanks for being my guinea pigs. The guys shuffled off to their stations and Kevin started feverish calculations in his notebook. He had a good idea of the range of truth serum that would work on adults of average height and weight. He would have to make a uniform pill to hand out because he wouldn't have access to a lab to adjust amounts based on every individual target. A generic pill would have to do. Luckily, Medi was quite tall and muscular. Hiro was average height and a little overweight, and Yuki was short and thin, so he had a good sample size of body type to work with. He was interrupted, however, by Mora at his side. Mora, what can I do for you? He asked. Mora looked nervous to approach him, but said in what she wanted to say. Do you want to test that stuff on a woman? I was studying Varibarbital last night, and there are conflicting opinions on whether or not it reacts with dominant hormones. Your 4 test subjects, including yourself, all have testosterone-dominant bodies. You might want to check that the effects are the same for estrogen-dominant bodies. Kevin considered it. He had seen that study on Varibarbital and its interactions with hormones, but had largely agreed with the herbalists who said there was no significant interaction. But Mora seemed certain, and part of mentoring these students was taking their ideas seriously. He checked the pot of Varibarbital. He had just enough to spare for one last trial. Sure, Mora. Good idea. Kevin mixed a concoction with the amount of Varibarbital that he was planning to put in the pills, the generic amount for any adult body type. Mora drank it and Kevin left the room so she could steal something. When he came back, he could tell already that she was handling the potion better than the guys had. Rather than the forced poker face that Yuki and Hiro had worn, she looked effortlessly cool, like she hadn't drunk it at all. How do you feel? Kevin asked, joining her across the lab table. Maura shrugged. Normal. Maybe a little excited. My heart rate is up according to my watch. She flashed him her SmartFace watch where her heart rate was, indeed, higher than it should have been. Great. What's your name? Kevin proceeded. Mary Jane Johnson, Maura said. Kevin watched closely as the Varabarbitol worked out that she was lying. Her face went from relaxed to slightly panicked. He could tell she was trying hard to remain calm. Are you sure about that? He prodded her. Her breathing got more intense and the heart rate readout on her watch jumped up to 120 beats per minute. Tell the truth, Kevin pressed. Maura Kelly, she gasped. How did that feel? Kevin asked. Like holding my breath underwater. It was fine at first, but I had to come up for air, Maura admitted. Kevin wrote that down. Okay, now I want to see if you'll give up the truth without me pressing for it. So still try to lie, but then we will sit in silence and see how long you can go. Maura nodded and Kevin asked, What did you steal from my lab? Maura shrugged. Nothing. A few seconds passed with Kevin staring at her. She started to ramble. Why would I need to steal anything? I work here. I have access to everything I need. I mean, I don't have a lab at home. It's not like I'm sneaking supplies out for my personal use. God, why can't you just trust me? Kevin kept quiet, watching her unravel. Fine, I stole a pair of tongs. Is that what you want to know? Kevin cocked his head to the side. She had not presented the tongs, so he did not believe her. He stared a little more intently. Maura pulled a small glass vial filled with witch hazel from her pocket. Take it! I don't want it anyway. She caught her breath, looking a little appalled at herself for raising her voice. How do you feel now? Kevin grinned, satisfied. Exhausted. Like I need a nap. Geez, that stuff really roots itself in your gut. It felt horrible lying to you. Kevin made a note of that too. It seems that the estrogen is more stubborn than the testosterone, but will relent eventually. Thank you for testing it for me. I appreciate your input. I'll up the amount going in the generic pills to make sure nothing gets by me when it's used on women. Maura nodded and went back to her station. Kevin adjusted his math and mixed the rest of the Varabarbitol with the necessary saline solution to dilute it. Then the other herbs and elements that would reduce its toxicity and strengthen the endorphins that would reward the target for telling the truth. He poured the concoction onto a sheet and stuck it in a dehydrator to turn it into a powder, then sifted that powder into the pill molds. Finally, he stuck the molds into the furnace and pulled out 24 compact tablets. He put them on the lab table to cool and looked up to find Olivia entering the lab. Hey, Kevin, how was Nashville? She asked, her tone business as usual. Kevin waved her over. Excellent. Check it out. The truth pill. He plucked one out of its tray and held it up to her. It was a pale green color and gave off the faintest glow from the Varabarbitol. Olivia examined it. It looks delicious, like a jelly bean. Kevin laughed. Maybe that's what I should tell people it is so they take it. For now, it's designed to dissolve in their drinks. As long as it doesn't make their mouths glow green, I'll be happy. He scooped the pills into a bottle and marked it with the label, for liars. Then he turned back to Olivia. So what's up? Any news on the epic clash? Olivia sat down across from him. Yes, unfortunately, Dalton and I did some digging with people close to the judges, and they're implementing a new rule this year. You can't bring any herbalist medications or enhancements in with you. They're checking bags. So your power pills, recovery pills, mental precision pills, and now these truth pills are going to be confiscated. Kevin swore. He had finally perfected his assortment of pills that would put him in the best possible shape for the clash, and now he couldn't even bring them. The wheels in his head started to turn, looking for a loophole. He got it. Kevin smirked at Olivia and said, "What if we disguise them as something else?" After returning home to Chicago, Kevin finally had the chance to make a truth serum from the ingredients given to him by Malachi Turner. It took some trial and error, but after a few tries, he was successfully able to craft a pill that forced his lab assistants to tell the truth. Everything was going well until Olivia revealed that the epic clash would include a security detail at the entrance, who would confiscate any form of pills if they found it. "We have to find a way to sneak the truth serum into the event," Kevin said. "If we can't use it to uncover who's cheating and how they plan to do it, I'll be totally unprepared. We have to know what they're up to." Olivia nodded. "I'll start brainstorming. I'm sure I can think of some way to sneak it in. The pills are so small they should fit into something that won't draw any attention, like a tube of lipstick or an inhaler, something like that." Kevin was once again reminded how lucky he was to have a lab assistant as loyal as Olivia. Just a few days earlier, she was in a medically induced coma, and now here she was developing a strategy to help sneak his truth serum into the epic clash. Kevin smiled. "Thanks, Olivia. I knew I could count on you." Olivia smiled back at him before a serious expression crept over her face. "Wait a second. What about your training? Are you sure you don't need to do it anymore?" Kevin considered it, but then he shook his head. "No, I should be good. The Myriad warriors I trained with were extremely proficient. I showed them a few things and they taught me some new tricks as well. I feel about as well prepared as I could be, physically anyways." Olivia trusted his word. "All right, Kevin, sounds good. I trust you to know better than I would. It's your body, after all." Just then, Kevin's phone started to ring. Glancing at the caller ID, he saw that it was Dalton. "Hey, Dalton, what information do you have for me?"
"It looks like you're going to have to come out to D.C. a little sooner than we expected, Kevin. There's a dinner being hosted the night before the clash, and all contestants have been asked to attend. Might be a good opportunity to scope out the competition."
Kevin hesitated to agree. He was really looking forward to spending some quality time with Lily. But his gut told him he couldn't miss the dinner. It would be the perfect time to experiment with his truth serum. "Understood, Dalton. I'll start packing right away and be there as soon as possible. See you soon." When Kevin hung up the phone, Olivia looked at him with curiosity brimming in her eyes. "Well," she asked, "what is it?" Kevin sighed. "We're going to need a solution to that security check sooner than we thought. It turns out that there's a dinner being hosted tonight in honor of the contestants. Might be a good opportunity to put our truth serum into action." Olivia quickly picked up the pace. "Right. I'm on it. I'm going to go home and start looking for something to hollow out and fill with pills. I'll meet you there." With that, Olivia turned around and briskly walked out of the lab. "Thanks, Olivia. Call me if you run into any trouble." Next, Kevin pulled out his phone and dialed Lily's number. She probably won't be very happy to hear about this, he thought. After a few rings, Lily answered. "Kevin, I was just about to call you. What time do you think you'll be home tonight? I can't wait to see you." Kevin broke the news to her as softly as he could. The last thing he wanted was to hurt her feelings. "I'm sorry to say it, Lily, but it turns out I'll have to go to D.C. straight from the lab today. There's a dinner being hosted for all the contestants of the Epic Clash, and I can't afford to miss it. I hope you understand." The silence was deafening until Lily finally answered with a gentle voice. "I understand, Kevin. You've got to do what you've got to do. Can I at least come by the lab to say goodbye?" Kevin grinned. "Of course you can. Come on over. I'll see you soon." 20 minutes later, Lily and Rachel arrived and joined Kevin in the lab. The moment she walked through the door, Kevin dropped what he was doing and hugged her. "It's so good to see you, my love. I'm so sorry that I have to leave you so soon. I was really looking forward to spending more time together." Pulling away from the hug, Lily continued to hold Kevin's hands with deep affection. "That's all right, Kevin. With so many different responsibilities on your plate, I understand you won't always have time to sit back and relax. Your dedication to your work is one of the reasons I love you so much. So don't worry." Kevin truly appreciated that Lily understood the epic clash wasn't just important for him. It was important for both of them. "Thanks, Lily. You're the best wife a man could ever ask for. I'm so lucky to have you in my life." Feeling a bit like a third wheel, Rachel found a way to interject. "So, Kevin, where have you been all this time? Last I heard, you were on your way to Nashville." Kevin turned to Rachel and casually shrugged his shoulders. "Well, it's a bit of a long story, but basically, to sum it all up, I learned that some prominent families are planning to cheat at the upcoming epic clash. So in order to expose them, I had to get some help to create a truth serum. Once I've gotten everyone to take it, they'll all spill their beans and I'll know what to look out for." Rachel's eyes and ears perked up the moment she heard the word truth serum. "Oh, a truth serum, huh? That sounds like it would come in handy for all sorts of things." Kevin could sense Rachel's eagerness to get her hands on some of the truth serum and tried to extinguish the thought immediately. "I've seen it in action and it's pretty amazing, but it isn't a toy. When wielding something as powerful as a truth serum, it's important to use it ethically, like to expose corruption, for example." Rachel pouted sarcastically. "So you're saying I can't have some to give to my ex-boyfriend and finally learn whether he was cheating on me or not?" Kevin chuckled. "That is a perfect example of what it shouldn't be used for. Think of the truth serum as a weapon. It should only be used when absolutely needed." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Well, where's the fun in that?" Kevin had tried to discourage her, but the wheels in Rachel's minds were already turning. "I'm still not completely convinced that Kevin isn't having an affair with Olivia," she thought to herself. "After the fire, he put Olivia's needs before Lily's without even stopping to think about it. If I can get some of that truth serum into his system, I'll be able to get to the bottom of this for good. It's time to give him a taste of his own medicine." With a secret plan hatched in her head, Rachel turned to Kevin and said, "You know, Kevin, I don't think I've ever received a proper tour of the lab. Would you mind showing us around?" Kevin took her words at face value and happily agreed. "Sure. There's a lot less to show since the fire burned everything down, but I can at least show you where things used to be." Thinking of the fire, Lily asked, "What are your plans for the future, Kevin? Are you going to try and rebuild this lab or find a new one somewhere else in the city?" Because he was so busy preparing for the epic clash, Kevin hadn't given it much thought. "I'm not sure, to be honest. I do love this building, but it might be damaged beyond repair. I'll decide what to do next after the epic clash. It's all I've had time to think about for weeks." Kevin led Lily and Rachel to a steel door and opened it. Inside were about a dozen shelves filled with various herbs and plants. "This is where we keep the raw materials. We've lost a lot of them in the fire, but have since restocked." Lily's eyes were wide open and curious. "Wow, it's like a jungle in here. And it smells like a giant cup of exotic coffee." Kevin laughed. "Yes, the exotic smells are one of the best things about being an herbalist. Not everything smells so nice, though. I once harvested a collection of South American skunkweed that smelled like absolute death." Rachel smiled and then guided the conversation in her own direction. "And what about the synthesized pills? Where do you keep the finished product?" Kevin led them away from the supply closet to a pantry with frosted glass doors. When he opened it up, they saw jars, vials, and tubes filled with pills and medicinal liquids. "This is where we keep everything. No matter what's wrong with you, I guarantee there's some kind of pill in here that could help." Rachel had finally stumbled upon what she needed. One of the little jars was labeled TS. Truth serum, she deduced. "This is also interesting, Kevin. Thanks for the tour. Is there a restroom nearby?" Kevin pointed down the hall. "Just around the corner there." "Thanks," Rachel replied. After using the restroom, Rachel stopped inside the break room and brewed 3 cups of coffee. Then, on her way back to Kevin and Lily, she quietly opened the medicine cabinet, retrieved a truth serum pill, and stirred it into one of the mugs of coffee. When she rejoined her friends, she handed the spiked mug to Kevin and said, "With the long night ahead of you, I figured you could use a pick-me-up." None the wiser, Kevin held the mug up to his lips and took a sip. "Thanks, Rachel. This really hit the spot." Rachel grinned as Kevin took another sip of coffee. "It worked," she thought. "This ought to be interesting." After taking a sip of her own coffee, Rachel glanced at Kevin with inquisitive, almost predatory eyes. "So, Kevin, I actually have a few more questions for you before you leave." After learning that a special dinner was being hosted for the contestants of the Epic Clash, Kevin had no choice but to pack up his things and go to D.C. earlier than expected. Before leaving, though, Lily and Rachel stopped by the lab to say goodbye. When she learned about the truth serum Kevin's team had recently developed, she instantly thought of using it against him and secretly stole some to slip into his coffee. "I don't mind answering any questions, Rachel. In fact, I'm thrilled to learn you have such a keen interest in herbalism. I had no idea," Kevin exclaimed. By then, the truth serum had already taken effect. It was completely tasteless and undetectable, though, so Kevin hadn't noticed. "Oh no," Rachel said. "I'm all out of herbalist questions, but hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we play a game of truth or dare before you take off? It could be a fun way to learn something new about each other." Lily shook her head. "Oh gosh, I'm sure Kevin has to get going. Don't you, Kev? You said the dinner was later tonight, didn't you?" She tried to pin it on Kevin's schedule, but deep down, Lily just wasn't very interested in playing. Kevin, on the other hand, thought it might be fun. If anything, it would be a good opportunity to bond with Lily before he had to go. He looked at his watch and smiled. "I've got a bit of time. Come on, Lily. It'll be fun. Who should go first?" Rachel held up her hand. "I'll go first. Kevin, truth or dare?" Kevin scratched his chin and pondered a moment. Truth. Perfect. That was just the answer Rachel was looking for. "Is Olivia going to D.C. with you?" Kevin quickly nodded his head. "Of course she is. She's my main lab assistant." "That's a weird question. Why do you ask?" Rachel shrugged her shoulders and batted her eyelashes. "No reason. Just curious is all. Okay, Lily, it's your turn." Lily uncrossed her arms with a sigh. You guys are reminding me of my nightmarish teenage years. But fine. Rachel, truth or dare?" "Dare," Rachel quickly replied. Lily glanced around the room for something that might catch her attention. "Oh, I know. I dare you to go into the supply closet, pick out a random herb, and eat it." "Ew. Gross," Rachel squealed. Kevin threw his head back and laughed. "Well, hold on now. Some of those herbs are poisonous or worse. She couldn't just pick something at random." Lily had to admit to herself she was starting to enjoy the game. "Well, you can stop her if she picks something deadly then. Come on, Kevin. You can spare one little herb, can't you?" Rachel's face soured. "Oh gosh, I don't want to do that. What if it's slimy or it tastes disgusting? Can't you think of anything else?" Lily smiled. "If you really don't want to do it so badly, you could just switch to truth." Rachel frowned. "No way. If it were just you, maybe, but not in front of Kevin. Fine. Let's go to the supply closet and I'll find something to eat." Just saying it made her want to gag. When Kevin opened the supply closet, Rachel stepped inside and had a look around. They were surrounded by shelves, drawers, and cabinets full of ingredients of all shapes, sizes, and colors, collected from all over the world. A couple of herbs even hung from the ceiling. Once she had seen everything, Rachel reached for the petal of a little red flower, but Kevin held out his hand and stopped her. Easy now. That thing will cause your hair to burst into flames. Rachel pulled her hand away with an unsettled face. What good could that possibly do? Kevin chuckled. Well, nothing much on its own, but when mixed with purple fairy mushroom, it will make your hair glow in the dark. We tend to invest more in medicinal products than cosmetic ones, but sometimes we stumble upon something fun in the process of experimenting. Rachel reached for another ingredient. This time it was a small jar of a substance that looked like blue-colored honey. Of course, Kevin stopped her again. I know that looks tasty, but a single drop of the stuff will make you hallucinate your worst nightmares. I got a whole splash of it on my tongue once before I knew what I did. Trust me, it was not a good time. Rachel threw up her arms and snorted. Well, is there anything in here that won't, burn my hair or give me terrible visions? Kevin reached up to the tallest shelf and grabbed a little vial of green seeds. Here you go. Try this, he said as he handed one to Rachel. This isn't going to turn me into a frog or something, is it? Kevin winked at her with a smile. Only one way to find out. Shortly after she popped the seed into her mouth and swallowed, Rachel's skin began to slowly change to bright green. Lily and Kevin couldn't help but laugh, but Rachel was less than amused. Oh my gosh, Kevin, I look like an alien. This better not be permanent. Kevin wiped a tear from his eye and reassured her it wasn't. No, you'll be back to normal in just a few minutes. Sorry, Rachel, I just couldn't help myself. Lily turned to Kevin and told him, Okay, Kevin, it's your turn. Who are you going to pick? For Kevin, the decision was easy. All right, Lily, truth or dare? Well, Lily said, after what just happened to Rachel, I think I better go with truth. Kevin nodded and started to think of a question. What's your favorite thing about me? Lily groaned. Oh, come on, Kevin. I can't whittle it down to just one thing. There's so much I love about you, it'd be impossible. Kevin smirked. But if you really had to choose just one thing, what would it be? Come on, you can say it. Rachel pointed to the inside of her mouth. I think I'm going to be sick. After pausing for a moment, Lily finally said, I love that you always do the right thing, no matter what. You always know what's best, Kevin, and being near you makes me feel safe. Kevin smiled. It was probably the nicest compliment he'd ever received. Thanks, Lily. I love you too. Rachel had heard enough. It was time for her to get some more answers. All right, Kevin, one more round. Truth or dare? Kevin looked at his watch. He was cutting it pretty close, but sure, he had time for one more. Truth. Rachel took a deep breath. Because of the truth serum she had slipped him earlier, his answer was sure to be truthful. This next question could unravel the whole marriage, she thought to herself. Kevin, do you really love Lily as much as you say you do? Kevin made a confused face and scoffed. What? What kind of question is that, Rachel? Of course I do. I love my wife more than anything. Follow-up question. Do you, Kevin Williams, have feelings for your lab assistant Olivia in any way, shape, or form? This was it, Rachel thought. The question that would either be his undoing or clear his name for good. Before Kevin answered, Lily interjected. Seriously, Rachel? This again? I thought I told you to never bring this up again. Rachel looked back at Lily with apologetic eyes. I know, Lily. Just let him answer, will you? You have to trust me. It's important. Lily shot Rachel a dirty look, but before she could open her mouth and say something mean, Kevin answered the question. It really is a stupid question, Rachel. Of course I don't have any feelings for Olivia. There's no one in this world I could ever love more than Lily. She's the love of my life and she means everything to me. Olivia is a talented lab assistant and a good friend, but our relationship doesn't go any deeper than that. Rachel heaved a sigh of relief. For the first time, she actually believed him. I believe you, Kevin. I just wanted to ask and get to the bottom of this once and for all. I should probably tell you that I spiked your coffee with the truth serum before we started playing. I'm sorry, Kevin, I just had to know. Kevin frowned. You what? The truth serum isn't a toy, Rachel. You should have never used it for something so petty and personal. Rachel really was sorry. I know, but it was eating me up inside, Kevin. The thought of Lily being cheated on made me sick and, well, maybe I should have believed you in the first place, but now that I know for sure, I won't have to worry about it at all anymore. I can support your relationship beyond a shadow of a doubt. Lily noticed Kevin's stern face and tried to ease the tension. She was just looking out for me, Kevin. I know she shouldn't have done it, but at least it came from a good place. Glancing back and forth between Lily and Rachel, Kevin finally took a deep breath and let his guard down. Fine. Just promise me you won't do something like that again, Rachel. From an herbalist perspective, it was extremely unethical. Rachel nodded. I promise. And with that, Kevin sighed and let the whole thing go. All right, I should probably get going now. Best of luck planning the gala, honey. I know it's going to be great. Lily looked up and kissed Kevin. I'm looking forward to it. You and I and all the guests. We are going to have an incredible time. Next, Kevin looked at Rachel and nodded. So you finally trust me now. Rachel lunged into his arms and gave him a hug. I'm sorry I didn't trust you sooner. You're really a great guy, Kevin. Kevin hugged Rachel back and for the first time since they met, believed that she really did like him. Finally, Kevin picked up his bag and took his leave. Bye, guys. Wish me luck. Lily and Rachel waved goodbye with big smiles. You don't need luck, honey. You're going to do great. Don't forget to call me. Half an hour later, Kevin's private driver dropped him off at the airport. There was a separate boarding process for people with private jets, so Kevin didn't have to wait in too long of a line. He did, however, still have to go through security. As he was removing his shoes and placing them in a bin, he suddenly heard a familiar voice call out from behind the security checkpoint.
Hey, is that who I think it is? Hey, Kevin, how's the training going? I bet you haven't gotten much done since, your whole entire building burned down.
Kevin recognized the voice right away. He looked over and saw Ethan snickering next to Mario, putting their shoes back on after going through security. Without thinking, Kevin blurted out, Actually, I've been able to do some training at the new Myriad compound in Nashville. It's a great facility, really. Kevin threw his hand over his mouth. He definitely didn't mean to say that. The truth serum must still be in my system, he thought. Whatever I do, I can't let Mario and Ethan find out that I'm bringing a truth serum to the Epic Clash. Before heading off to DC for the Epic Clash, Kevin agreed to a game of Truth or Dare with Lily and Rachel in the lab. Little did he know Rachel had spiked his coffee with the truth serum in order to question his loyalty to Lily. Of course, he confessed his honest love for Lily, and Rachel finally let go of all her suspicions about Kevin and Olivia. Afterwards, he ran into Ethan and Mario at the airport, and with the truth serum still in his system, it was going to be a challenge not to reveal his plans.
So, Kevin, you must be on your way to Washington for the Epic Clash, right? Personally, I can't wait. Something tells me you and I are going to have a lot of fun. Mario snickered and bumped fists with Ethan as they waited for Kevin to come through security. Fun? I can't remember a single time I've ever had fun with you around, Mario. The less I see of you, the better. Mario smirked. He looked almost flattered by Kevin's words. Sounds like you're pretty scared of me, Kevin. Good. I like it that way. Kevin rolled his eyes as he started to put his shoes back on. Scared? No. Frustrated and annoyed? Yes. When Kevin picked up his luggage, he tried to push straight past Mario and Ethan, but they blocked his path. Hold on a second. We've got some questions for you, Ethan said with a frown. Kevin frowned right back at him. I've got a plane to catch. I don't have time for this. Kevin tried to push past them, but Mario was blocking the doorway out to the airfield.
His large body filled up the entire frame, and Kevin couldn't get past him without starting a brawl, which would cause security to detain him. He couldn't risk it. Instead, he crossed his arms, exhaled sharply, and stared at Mario with a dirty look. "Get out of my way, Mario. I've already seen enough of you as it is." Mario met Kevin's aggression with a charming smile.
"You know, Kevin, cheating at the Epic Clash is such common practice. It's practically a tradition. I won't be doing any cheating, of course, but what about you? Have you got any tricks up your sleeve?"
"I'm bringing a truth serum that will expose all you cheaters." The thought fired straight to the front of Kevin's mind, begging to be spoken. But Kevin gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to say it. With the truth serum coursing through his veins, he couldn't lie exactly, but with enough willpower, he could at least bend the truth. Kevin took a deep breath and said, "Let's just say that I doubt any cheating will be tolerated this year." Ethan joined Mario's side.
"You seem pretty confident about that, Kevin. What makes you so sure?"
Again, the urge to blurt out, "I have a truth serum," was overwhelming. The words were right there on the tip of Kevin's tongue. Pushing the thought to the back of his mind, Kevin swallowed and said, "The funny thing about the truth, Ethan, is that it has a way of revealing itself one way or another. You ought to know that better than anyone. For your whole life, you thought you were a member of the Williams family, but like clockwork, the truth eventually revealed itself. It always does." Ethan's eyes suddenly became full of anger and vengeance.
"You watch your mouth, Kevin. I'm glad I'm no longer a member of the Williams family. The last thing I'd want is to be affiliated with an arrogant pretender like you."
Kevin clenched his fists. The tension between him and Ethan was boiling. Just before things got physical, Mario interjected with a laugh.
"All right, gentlemen. That's enough playtime for now. Let's save it for the clash. I'll see you in there, Kevin. Best of luck," he said with a sarcastic smile.
When Mario stepped aside, Kevin hurried out the door. "Good riddance." As Mario watched him walk away, his smile quickly turned into a frown.
"Do you think he's up to something?"
Ethan asked. Mario nodded his head.
"When it comes to the clash, everyone is up to something. Just keep your eyes peeled and stick to the plan. If we do that, he won't even make it past the first round. I guarantee it."
After landing in D.C., Kevin took a private car to the venue where the dinner was being hosted. With several spotlights shining into the dark sky outside, Kevin could see it coming miles away. Stepping out of the car, his foot touched a red carpet that led all the way up to the door. They really went all out for this thing, didn't they? Kevin thought. The moment Kevin stepped out of the car, he started receiving glares. Almost everyone else attending the dinner was dressed up in suits and ball gowns, but Kevin, per usual, was dressed modestly, in a casual t-shirt and jeans. Thanks to his elevated senses, Kevin was able to hear some of their whispers as he approached the venue.
"Can you believe that guy's outfit? He's clearly on the wrong side of the poverty line." "Wow, look at that. Poor guy must be lost."
"I didn't know the Epic Clash was accepting homeless people," another person said with a sneer. Kevin didn't pay the gossip any mind. He was used to being underestimated. In fact, he thrived on it. Besides Lily, there was nothing he loved more than proving his enemies wrong. Outside the doors that led into the venue, there was a table to register. As Kevin approached it, the woman seated at the table gave him a confused look. "Hello, sir. I'm afraid a private event is being hosted inside tonight. No public entry is allowed." Kevin chuckled. "I'm a contestant, actually. Kevin Williams?" The woman glanced down at her clipboard and was shocked to see his name there. "Of course. I'm so sorry, Mr. Williams. My mistake. Sign here, please." After signing the registry, Kevin heard a boyish voice call out from behind. "You can't be serious. This guy is here to participate in the clash? He looks like he doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together." Kevin turned around and saw a young man standing behind him. He was dressed in a gray suit with a bright purple tie, and his hair was slicked back with gel. Kevin quickly sized him up and could instantly tell he wasn't much of a threat. His power base must have been around level 5 at the highest. "Looks can be deceiving, friend. I've got more important things to spend my money on than important clothes." The well-dressed man scoffed. "You could have at least put on a dress shirt or something. To show up dressed like that is just plain disrespectful. Let me guess. You must be from New Money, am I right? I can always tell." Kevin frowned. "And you must have been born into wealth, correct? People like you always think they're better than everyone else, despite the fact that they haven't accomplished a single thing. I worked hard for my money. Can you say the same?" The young man clenched his fists. "You dare say I haven't accomplished anything? I've been training for this competition since I was 5 years old. Take it back or I'll make you regret it." Kevin smiled, amused by the young man's fragile ego. "I can't and won't take it back, because it's the truth." "You little insect! I'm gonna take those words and stuff them right back into your mouth." The young man brushed up his sleeves and started running toward Kevin with his fist at the ready. Kevin just stood there completely unafraid. When the young man threw out a punch, Kevin reached up, grabbed his fist, and forced him to the ground in the blink of an eye. Pinching the pressure point in his wrist, Kevin looked down at the man and grinned as a cold glow came from his eyes. "If I wanted to, I could break your wrist right here and now, but I really don't want to do that. So you're going to apologize and leave me alone, right?" The young man groaned when Kevin applied a bit of pressure. "All right, fine. You win. I'm sorry, just let me go." As soon as Kevin let the young man go, he jumped to his feet and struck Kevin with an uppercut, knocking him back against the registration table. The young man put his hands on his hips and laughed. "You didn't seriously think I'd give up that easily, did you?" Kevin glared at the man with sharp, frustrated eyes. "I've never been one to run from a challenge, but must we do this here, in front of all these people?" The young man's answer was swift and straight to the point. He launched himself at Kevin with a rapid spinning kick aimed at his chest. The crowd gasped collectively, their murmurs of surprise rippling through the air. Kevin sidestepped the incoming kick as the young man's foot missed its mark and sent him slightly off balance. Seizing the opportunity, Kevin executed a quick jab to the young man's side, a precise strike that momentarily winded him. Oof! But the young man was resilient. With remarkable agility, he somersaulted backward, landing gracefully on his feet. His eyes burned with determination as he lunged forward again, launching a flurry of punches and kicks. "I wouldn't underestimate me if I were you. I spent over 2 decades training with the best instructors money can buy." Despite the young man's best effort, Kevin pushed back the blows with ease. He weaved through the young man's attacks, his footwork impeccable, and countered with a series of swift strikes. "Seems to me like you've been terribly spoiled all your life. Tell me, is this the very first time you haven't gotten exactly what you wanted?" Unable to think of a clever response, the young man roared with anger. He executed a powerful roundhouse kick, a move that sent his legs slicing through the air like a blade. Kevin barely managed to block the attack, his forearms absorbing the impact as he gritted his teeth against the force. As the confrontation reached its climax, the young man launched a final desperate assault. He aimed a spinning back kick at Kevin's head, his movements fueled by sheer insecurity and rage. But Kevin, with a calm and almost effortless motion, ducked under the kick and swept the young man's leg out from beneath him. The young man crashed to the ground, his limbs splayed out as the crowd gasped in disbelief. Kevin stood over him, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. The young man was knocked out cold. After catching his breath, he looked out at the crowd and said, Anyone else have a problem with how I'm dressed? Before he could enter the venue where the dinner was being hosted, Kevin was bothered by a young man who didn't approve of his outfit. When he refused to back down, Kevin taught the young man a lesson and knocked him out cold. After that, nobody dared whisper another word about his clothes. Looks like you're already making new friends, huh? Kevin turned around and saw Olivia approaching from the sidewalk. She was wearing a sparkly blue dress and her face was more done up than Kevin had ever seen before. Hello, Olivia. Good to see you. That's a beautiful dress you're wearing. Olivia smiled. Thank you, Kevin, and you look... She struggled to find the words. Very comfortable, I suppose? Like always? Kevin laughed. It helps me hold on to my humility. Rich people can be so arrogant, can't they? I never want to forget that I have a connection to all people, not just rich and powerful ones. Enough of that. Do you have the truth serum? How are you planning to get it through security? Olivia held up her purse. Don't worry. I've got it all worked out. Come on, let's head inside. After stepping through the doors, Kevin and Olivia were ushered over to a security officer. Kevin stepped up first and the officer began to pat him down.
Are you concealing any weapons or contraband, sir?
Kevin shook his head. Just my phone, officer. The officer nodded and gestured for Kevin to enter.
All clear. Go ahead.
Olivia stepped up next.
I'm going to have to search your purse, ma'am. Is that all right?
Olivia nodded. Of course, officer. I understand. This was the moment their entire plan was hinging on. If the truth serum pills didn't make it through security, they'd have no way of knowing who was planning on cheating and who wasn't. Kevin waited anxiously to see if Olivia's plan worked. After poking through Olivia's purse, the officer retrieved a small container of pills and asked,
What are these?
Kevin's heart dropped into his stomach. Olivia waved at the officer and casually laughed. Oh, how did those get in there? I meant to leave those at home. Sorry, officer. The officer looked her up and down suspiciously.
After last year's incident, we're not allowing pills of any kind into the building. I'm going to have to keep these until the end of the night. Is that all right with you?
Olivia sighed. Well, if you must, officer, I understand. I should be able to live without them for just a few hours. The officer put the pills in his pocket and continued to search through Olivia's purse. After finding nothing suspicious, he handed the purse back to Olivia and said,
All right. You're clear. Go ahead.
When she walked up to Kevin, his face was full of shock. Oh no, he said under his breath. They took the pills. I thought you said you were going to hide them inside a lipstick tube or something. Olivia grinned as she took a tube of lipstick out from her purse. I did. The pill bottle was only a distraction. I knew they'd find it, and it would throw them off the scent. It's called a red herring, Kevin. Ever heard of it? She unscrewed the bottom of the lipstick tube, dropped a few pills into her palm, and handed them to Kevin, whose concern quickly disappeared as a huge smile crept over his face. Good going, Olivia. I knew you could do it. Olivia bowed with a self-satisfied grin. All right then, shall we? Kevin offered her his hand. Time to find out just how many hornets we have inside the beehive. As he and Olivia stepped inside the ballroom, the first word that sprang to Kevin's mind was stuffy. In the center of the massive space, there was a giant ice sculpture of a swan, surrounded by trays of hors d'oeuvres. Portraits of world-famous herbalists and former champions of the Epic Clash lined the walls, and classical piano music filled the room. Banquet tables were scattered all over, each of them brimming with lively conversation. Kevin walked up to one of the portraits on the wall and admired it. The subject was a young woman in a green gown covered in floral patterns. Studying the painting, Kevin dropped his jaw. This woman in this portrait is named Anne de la Robles. She was the first person to successfully synthesize a frontal lobe anesthetic, which brought relief to people who suffered from migraine headaches.
Ah, Mr. Williams, I see you know your herbalist history quite well.
Kevin turned around and saw a short, stout man standing behind him who quickly introduced himself.
The name is Branson, Thomas Branson. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Williams. That mental precision pill you introduced to the market was really something. You've got a bright future ahead of you, kid.
Kevin didn't appreciate being addressed as kid, but he reached out and shook Mr. Branson's hand anyway. Thank you, sir. What brings you to the Epic Clash? Are you an herbalist yourself? Mr. Branson threw his head back and laughed. Clearly he had already had a couple of drinks.
Me? Oh, heavens no. I made all my money selling candy bars. The thing about candy, Mr. Williams, is that no matter how bad things get, economically, people are always willing to spend $1 on chocolate. People just can't get enough of the stuff.
Kevin forced a smile. Well, I suppose that processed sugar will always be a worthwhile investment.
Indeed, lad. Indeed. No, I'm not an herbalist, but my son is. You should meet him. I'm sure you two would get along like chocolates and peanuts. Where is he anyway? He should have arrived an hour ago. You haven't seen a young man in a bright purple tie, have you?
Kevin suddenly remembered the well-dressed young man he had fought outside the building. He did, in fact, have a bright purple tie. Kevin shrugged his shoulders and shook his head. Sorry, sir, but I'm afraid I haven't seen anyone matching that description. Just then, Olivia tugged on Kevin's arm. What do you say we go get a drink, Kevin? I'm starting to feel pretty thirsty. With big rosy cheeks and a bit of sweat dripping off his forehead, Mr. Branson quickly excused himself.
Of course, dear. Don't let me keep you waiting. Wonderful to meet you, Mr. Williams. Good luck out there. Oh, and let me know if you ever want to team up and produce some chocolate-flavored medicine. I'm sure it'll be a big hit with the kids.
Kevin awkwardly nodded and said goodbye before following Olivia towards the bar. On their way there, a blonde-haired woman who looked an awful lot like Olivia glared at them. Before they got too close, she took her leave and walked away. That woman looks just like you with blonde hair. Do you think she's your doppelganger or something? Olivia shook her head and continued to watch the blonde woman as she walked away. That's my sister Katya, remember? She's definitely got something planned against you. Be sure to talk to her once we fill these people up with the truth serum. Kevin scratched his chin in thought. Speaking of which, how are we going to do that? It's not like we can just spike everyone's drinks. No, but we can spike the punch bowl. Olivia pointed to a self-serve bar situated in the corner of the room. At the center of the table, there was a large punch bowl surrounded by guests who were pouring themselves a glass. A flash of determination shone in Kevin's eyes. Perfect. As they approached the punch bowl, the crowd gradually dissipated until Kevin and Olivia were the only ones left. Now hurry, Olivia whispered. Kevin dug the truth serum pills out of his pocket, but before he could drop them into the punch, a voice rang out from behind.
Well, 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 would you look at that? My most favorite person in the whole world standing along my least favorite. Olivia, you look beautiful. Kevin, you look like you just woke up and stumbled through a thrift shop before coming here. Quite a contrast the two of you make.
Kevin quickly slipped the pills back into his pocket and turned to face Mason Zimmerman, who hated Kevin for being so close to his love interest, Olivia. With his hair slicked all the way back, a cane and a small cape draped over his shoulders, he looked a bit like a sleazy vampire. Nice Dracula costume, Kevin said, but I still think we're a few months shy of Halloween. Mason frowned as his cheeks turned bright red. I'll have you know that this style is all the rage in Paris. I wouldn't expect you to know much about fashion, Kevin. Kevin opened his mouth to retaliate, but Olivia beat him to the punch. Mason, it looks like you put a lot of time and attention into your outfit. It looks great. Could we talk for a moment in private, please? Mason's eyes filled with joy.
Could it be? He thought. Is she finally going to confess her love to me? All he said, though, was, Of course, Olivia. Anything for you, my dear.
As Olivia pulled him aside, she glanced back at Kevin and nodded her head at the punch bowl. Go ahead, she was saying. I'll distract him. As soon as they were far enough away from Mason to not notice what he was doing, Kevin fished the truth serum pills out of his pocket and dropped them into the punch bowl. With a quick stir, Kevin saw them completely dissolve. Just then, a well-dressed man walked up to the bar and poured himself a drink. Kevin smiled. Good punch, huh? After sneaking the truth serum pills in through security, Kevin and Olivia headed straight for the punch bowl. Just as Kevin was about to spike it, Mason Zimmerman snuck behind them looking for trouble. In an effort to distract him, Olivia pulled Mason aside while Kevin finished the job. Look, Mason, Kevin is actually a really nice guy if you just give him a chance. He's smart, talented, compassionate, wise. Mason cut Olivia off in the middle of her sentence. Is that why you pulled me over here? To go on and on about how great Kevin is? Olivia's eyes flashed anger and her face curled up with frustration. Well, yeah, basically. I know you don't like him, but this competition you're about to go into is extremely dangerous. And a person like Kevin would be a good person to have on your side. It could make the difference between life and death. Mason crossed his arms and snorted. To him, Olivia's words were like nails on a chalkboard. What's that supposed to mean? You don't think I can handle myself? Olivia grunted in annoyance. That's not what I mean. Why do you have to turn everything into an argument? I'm only trying to protect you is all. Mason's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly his tone was much less aggressive. Protect me? Does that mean you actually care about me? He looked back at Olivia with the vulnerable eyes of a puppy dog dropped off at the pound. Olivia sighed. Of course I care about you, Mason. You annoy me more than anyone else I've ever met, but I don't ever want to see you get hurt out there. Just consider teaming up with Kevin, all right? If you do that, who knows? You might even make it to the top 10. Mason stuck out his lower lip and pouted. If I consider calling a truce with Kevin, will it make you like me more? Olivia groaned inside, but knew she had to hide her frustration from Mason. You know what? It couldn't hurt. Mason's frown quickly turned into a smile. If I agree to it now, will you go out on a date with me? Now Olivia was the one who was frowning. Don't push your luck. Mason shrugged his shoulders and backed off. Fine. I'll think about it, but no promises. Just then, Kevin walked up to them with 3 glasses of punch. When he handed one to Olivia, he winked to let her know it was spiked. Mason took the other glass and said, Well, look who it is. We were just talking about you, Kevin. You haven't poisoned my drink, have you? Kevin laughed. Haha, don't be ridiculous, Mason. We both know that if I wanted to take you out, I wouldn't have to resort to such sneaky methods. Mason took a sip of the punch and chuckled. I should hope not. Besides, even if you were to poison me, I could probably whip up an antidote before it got into my system. I've been working on my herbalist skills a great deal, you should know. Kevin smiled. Oh, really? Tell me then, what kind of pills have you been synthesizing? Mason stuttered after taking another sip of his drink. Oh, you know, the usual stuff. Power pills, brain boosters, anti-inflammatories. I've got a pretty good handle on this herbalist stuff if you ask me. Knowing that the truth serum was about to kick in, Kevin continued to press him. Wow, that's interesting. What kind of ingredients do you use for the brain boosters? Well, to be honest with you, I don't do much of the lab work myself. For the most part, my dad just makes the pills for me. Suddenly realizing what he had just said, Mason reached for his mouth and covered it. Kevin and Olivia, on the other hand, were holding back laughter. Wow, said Olivia. That's surprisingly honest for you, Mason. You seem to be turning over a new leaf. Mason slapped his forehead. That's not what I meant to say at all. What I meant to say is that my father, Lawrence Zimmerman, pretty much does all the work for me. Mason's eyes widened with shock. that wasn't what he meant to say either. To him, it was like the words were speaking themselves. He had no control over his tongue. Kevin's face turned red from trying to hold in the laughter. We get it, Mason. Herbalism doesn't exactly run in the family. You don't have to tell us again. Not wanting to embarrass himself any further, Mason set down his drink and turned to leave. I'll talk to you guys later. I better get going. Kevin had just one more question for him. Hold on, Mason, one last thing. I hear that practically everyone in the competition is planning on cheating this year. What kind of tricks do you have up your sleeve? Mason looked offended. You think I'm a cheater? No way. I really have been practicing the last few months, so if I'm going to win this thing, I want to win fair and square. I may be a lot to handle, but I'm definitely not a cheater. I stand far above that crowd. And with that, Mason took his leave. Kevin looked at Olivia and smirked. Well, I certainly didn't see that coming. The fact that he isn't cheating makes me respect him at least a little bit more. Olivia felt the same way. Suddenly, she sympathized with Mason a lot more than she did before. Mason's not a bad guy. He just has some trouble seeing past his own ego. If you see him struggling during the competition, maybe you could help him out? Kevin held up his hands in a false sign of surrender. Hey, I'm willing to bury the hatchet whenever he is. It's always been Mason who's had a problem with me, not the other way around. Olivia glanced around the room and saw her sister Katja sipping on a cup of punch, alone in the corner. Looks like my sister has had a bit of the punch too. We should go talk to her next. Olivia approached first, doing her best to maintain a friendly smile. Hey Katja, it's been a while, hasn't it? How are you doing? Katja looked at Kevin and Olivia with a harsh glare and then quickly glanced away, unimpressed. Hello, Olivia. I wasn't sure if you'd have the guts to talk to me. I'm all right. Still breaks my heart to see you colluding with the enemy, but I won't waste my breath. Olivia's face saddened. When they were little kids, she and her sister were inseparable. Deep down, she wished things could go back to the way they were back then. I'm sorry you still feel that way, Katja. I just wanted to say hello. Katja took another sip of her drink, refusing to make eye contact with either of them. Not wanting to draw things out, Olivia asked the question she came there to pose. So, any special strategies you're going into the competition with? I know you're always one to plan ahead. Katja had intended to say, none of your business. But instead, she opened her mouth and said, I'm working with Mario Kessler. The two of us have a plan to take you down, Kevin. The second she finished her sentence, Katja gasped. She was no fool, and instantly put together that she had somehow been compromised. Without another word, she leaned up against the wall and quickly darted away. Kevin had a stern look on his face. Well, I guess I'm not all that surprised, to be honest. Olivia sighed. It's my screwed-up family that turned her against us like this. I know it's hard to imagine, but she used to be so sweet. I really hope she comes back to her senses someday. Kevin glanced around the room looking for someone else to question. Hovering by the punch bowl, he saw a tall man with spiky blue hair. That guy seems interesting. Let's go have a chat with him. Kevin and Olivia walked up to the man and introduced themselves. Hi there. My name is Kevin Williams and this is my lab assistant, Olivia. What's your name, my friend? The man turned around and scoffed. He had a septum piercing hanging out of his nose and huge earrings the size of quarters. Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Williams. Everyone's saying you're out of your element here. I suppose that they're right. Kevin frowned. Do you always listen to whatever people tell you? The man shook his head. No, I don't. Let's just say I arrived at the conclusion independently. Your clothes say it all, mate. Where'd you get them? A homeless shelter? Kevin's patience was running thin. All right, I'll get straight to the point. Are you planning on doing any cheating this year? The man meant to shake his head no, but inadvertently nodded his head yes. I've got a judge in my pocket. I paid him to tell me about the challenges ahead of time. He's practically my pet." The man's jaw dropped when he heard his own words. "Sorry, I best be going. Nice chatting with you, mate." Kevin grinned as the man walked away. "Good punch, huh?" Olivia chuckled and nodded her head in agreement. Glancing around for another victim, Kevin noticed Mario sipping a glass of punch in the back of the room. "Now that's who I really want to talk to. Let's see what evil schemes you have up your sleeve, Mario Kessler." The events to welcome the Epic Clash competitors were in full swing in Washington, D.C. Kevin was milling around the competitors' lavish dinner, talking to as many people as possible to get them to admit to their cheating or plans to cheat. He had laced the communal drink supply with his truth pills, and so far people had been responding well, freely admitting to their evil plans. In fact, it had almost gone too well. The judges had been walking around the room joining conversations, and Kevin had seen them listening to people detailing their exact plans for cheating. The judges had started fanning out, speaking to everyone individually while still keeping up the impression of casual dinner conversation. But as Kevin watched, he had seen them confer with one another as well as with the competitors. It seemed like a larger cheating epidemic in the room was about to be revealed. Kevin had met Olivia's sister, Katja, and confirmed she would be fighting alongside the Kesslers. He had also run into Mason Zimmerman, who before tonight, Kevin would have bet anything would be cheating to take him down. He and Mason had bad blood that spanned back to the time when Mason wrongly thought Kevin had stolen Olivia's affections. But under the influence of the truth pill, Mason had promised he was not trying to cheat. If anything, he was going to be the most noble fighter possible, in hopes of winning over Olivia, for whom he had long been nursing a one-sided crush. So that just left Mario Kessler to deal with. Kevin had Mario and Katja cornered now, and he felt they were close to disclosing their cheating plans with all these judges wandering about within earshot. Kevin had just asked Mario point blank what his plan to cheat was, and he could see Mario fighting the truth pill in his system. Mario's lip quivered as he reluctantly let out the truth. "I put a bounty on your head, Williams. Anyone who aligns themselves with me and helps to take you down will be rewarded with riches beyond measure. I have contacts all over this city. You might have depleted my own fortunes, but I know there are plenty of people out there who would be glad to put up money to make sure Kevin Williams fails." Mario was spilling words so fast that Kevin could barely keep up with Mario's thoughts, which were making him sound like a crazy man. "And now that some of these idiots might not even make it out of here with herbalism powers intact, they're sure to be scrambling to help me destroy you. After all, the only thing worse than having no power is being poor and having no power." Mario spat at Kevin's feet, while Katja just stared between them with her nose in the air. Kevin was glad to know this secret, but it still wasn't exactly the information he was looking for. He would have to be more direct with his questioning. If Mario was really fighting the truth pill, Kevin would have to paint him into a very specific corner to get a worthwhile answer out of him. "That's not what I want to know, Kessler. I said, what are you going to do to break the rules and come out on top? How are you planning on cheating in this competition?" Kevin snarled. His vengeful side was coming out now. With the competition mere hours away, he had a lot of payback to serve Mario for all the times Mario had tried to have him killed or humiliated. Mario started to sweat, the truth bursting to be free from his lips, but before he could say anything, the host and MC, Sean McAllister, clinked a knife on his glass from the front of the room. "Attention, everyone! Attention!" The room quieted as everyone ended their conversations in hushed tones and turned to face Sean. Kevin wanted to pull Mario into the next room and keep grilling him, but drawing attention to himself this early in the clash was not something Kevin wanted to do. He already had a target on his back. Why make it bigger? The judges that Kevin had seen speaking to individuals in the room were now gathered behind Sean. Kevin felt a twitch in his stomach. Were they going to start publicly disqualifying the cheaters? Was this the reckoning he had planned for? Sean continued, "It seems that we have uncovered a great moral failing at this year's clash. Instead of honoring this storied competition with integrity and character, a great number in this room have admitted outright to cheating in the clash." The crowd tittered, with all the guests discussing this in whispers with those closest to them. A few people looked guilty, others looked outraged, and everyone was nervous. Sean shushed them again. "Now, since the clash has not yet begun, no one has actually cheated yet. But now that we know how many of you are planning to cheat, we have decided to implement a new set of rules this year. Let me be clear. I do not relish the chance to make things harder for you. You have brought this upon yourselves. Judges, please do me the favor of telling the competitors what you have learned." One judge stepped forward. She was a small woman with tight black curls cropped close to her head, but she spoke with clarity and authority that rivaled Sean's. 3 separate competitors have told me their sponsors have brought bribes to make the judges score them higher in each round. She stepped back and another judge stepped forward. This one was a tall, thin man with a shock of white hair at the top of his head, and his voice shook like a leaf ready to fall from its tree. "I learned of several competitors who intend to disable their opponents by tampering with their herbalism supplies, giving them a worse chance to win each round." He stepped back and a third judge came forward. This one wasted no time in barking out, "That competitor there has used a combination of herbalism and alchemy to turn their limbs from human flesh and muscle to robotic machinery, making them impossible to injure or defeat." Everyone looked to where the judge was pointing, but the crowd was too dense to see specifically who they were referring to. Sean took back control of the conversation. "That competitor will, of course, be disqualified. As for the rest of you, please listen carefully to these new rules." While Kevin had caused this chaos by spiking the communal drinks with truth pills, he did not think that implementing new rules was altogether fair. Why punish the honest competitors for the dishonest ones' bad deeds? Why should he have to abide by new rules just because Mario Kessler couldn't beat him fair and square? Even so, he listened, as instructed, while Sean read the new rules from a note card passed to him by the judges. "I hereby decree that in this year's epic clash, the following rules will be put in place. First, there will be only one winner. Only the best of the best is going to ascend to the upper realm." The room immediately erupted in an outcry. Competitors from every corner of the crowd shouted out, "It's not fair. You can't do this. We've trained for years. We've traveled from all around the country. You might as well call the whole thing off." Sean waited for everyone to settle down, wearing the expression of someone who used to call other people's bluffs. He knew they weren't going anywhere. After a beat, he held up his hands and total silence followed. "Only one winner will ascend to the upper realm. The rest of the top 10 will receive neither a punishment nor a prize, but the bottom 90 competitors will lose their herbalism powers entirely." If Kevin thought the first outcry was big, he couldn't even categorize the shock and horror this second rule laid down upon the room. There was a full 5 seconds of stunned silence before the shouts started. "That's crap! We don't deserve this! How could you do this to us? We've done nothing wrong! Just disqualify the cheaters and let the rest of us compete fair and square." Sean actually responded to this complaint. "The suspected cheaters have not yet cheated within the bounds of the epic clash. All we have on the record is intent to cheat, and we don't have time to conduct full investigations of every suspect before the clash begins tomorrow.
If you no longer wish to compete, you're welcome to leave here now.
His voice echoed throughout the room, silencing everyone at once. No one moved. Of course not. These were all the most confident and accomplished herbalists in the country. They all thought they were the best in the room, and that they would win this thing now that they had no choice. Kevin was among them. Only he had more reason than any of them to think he would win. He would know for sure when they were in the arena, but as a level 7 fighter, he had to be one of the best warriors in there. Sean wasn't done.
Obviously, it goes without saying that if any cheating transpires during the clash, the guilty party will be removed from the competition and stripped of their powers. So tonight, when you're doing your final preparations, think hard. Is your cheating worth it? Or will you come by the winning title and the upper realm honestly? That's all.
Sean McAllister and the judges filed out of the room, leaving everyone else to make sense of what they had just heard. Kevin didn't want to discuss this with Mario and Katya, so he made his way out of their bubble and toward the exit. There was only one person he wanted to talk this over with, his wife Lily.